A video conference grid. District 128 School Board President Dr.
So
Pat
we'll call
Grudy.
to order the regular business meeting of the Board of Education for Monday, June 22nd to order. If I could ask for a roll call, please. Or actually, I'm sorry, let's do the pledge first. All right?
Okay.
Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and justice
for all.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Okay, roll call, please.
Tim Batson,
Here.
Don Carmichael,
Here.
Pat Grudy,
Here.
Lisa Hessel,
Here.
Kevin Huber,
Here.
Karen Lundstedt,
Here.
Casey Rooney.
Here.
Okay, so we know what everybody's here. Look at the agenda. We will have a public hearing on a proposal to permanently transfer money from the Ed Fund to the the O&M Fund. We will open it up for public comment. And Brian, I suspect there is some tonight. Is that correct?
Pat, I've got 10 to read into the record.
Okay.
10 comments to read into the record.
Okay. Then President's report, Superintendent's report with a number of items on it. We will approve the consent vote agenda, which we reviewed earlier this evening. I will ask a question on the closed session minutes. Was there anybody that wanted to review that in closed session, or are we good to approve those as was submitted in your packets?
I'm good to approve.
I'm good.
All right, anybody opposed? All right, so we'll approve that as part of the consent vote agenda. Then we'll have brief updates from program and personnel and facilities and finance. Anything from CEDO, Karen?
Just brief.
Okay. And IASB, Jim?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, and then therefore we will not need the executive session, nor obviously we'll return to open session, so that should be it. All right, so let's open up, let's go to the public hearing. We declare the public hearing open and turn it over to Mr. Stanley for a brief presentation.
Assistant Superintendent for Finance Dan Stanley.
So we have in our capital projects that you've seen, the new pool and the Vernon Hills projects, the additions that we're doing. So we're paying for those out of our fund balance. We're not borrowing money, so we're avoiding the interest costs of borrowing that money. And so we're paying that out of money that we have in our accounts. And so in order to do that, we have to transfer money, essentially kind of transfer money from one bank account to another. It's called funds, the way we do fund accounting. And so this is we're transferring money from our education fund into our operations and maintenance fund, which will then get moved to offset the cost of the capital project. So this is a resolution to transfer permanently $6 million from our ed fund to our O&M fund. The law requires for the hearing and the notice in the paper that we've had. And so this is to fulfill that requirement for that hearing. If there are any public comments that are submitted for this hearing, they could be read, but that's really simply what this resolution is. Pat, you're muted.
District 128 School Board President Dr. Pat Grudy.
Did we get any comments in relation to the hearing?
No.
Okay. All right, so Dan, do you have anything further to present?
Nope, this was just for approval tonight.
Okay, then we declare the hearing closed. All right, next, public comment.
Superintendent Lee.
Okay. As I noted, we have several public comments related to the potential opening of school in the fall. I'm going to read them into the record in the order that they came in, from first to the last one that we received. I emailed Dr. Colentus early on about concerns regarding self-teaching, limited to no interactivity, and essentially checking boxes. He was responsive, seemed concerned, and was working with the educational team in this unprecedented situation. It needs to be different in the fall. Safety of our children, families, and staff should, of course, be the top priority. As an instructional designer and educator, just doing assessments and mundane assignments is not an enriching learning experience. It is disappointing. I have friends and relatives in other areas whose children had a vastly different and more positive interactive virtual learning experience. Sadly, my LHS sophomore and 2020 graduate had incredible difficulty engaging. It was a very depressing, isolating, and lonely experience for them. I would like to see virtual classes, not virtual assignments, but it is not safe for students to return to school. And that is from Michelle McGorry Gouch. The next, as the parent of 2 LHS students, I want to write with some thought that I hope will be shared at the June 22nd board meeting. We moved from another school district and more than doubled our taxes expressly so our children could attend LHS. Lifelong practicing Catholics with a spouse who attended Catholic school K-12. Carmel was considered and dismissed given the superior education and teaching staff at LHS. That was then, this is now. I was shocked and amazed, not in a good way, about the lack of rigor and discipline surrounding the last 2.5 months of e-learning. And I'm dismayed about what's to come. I truly believe that LHS's in-person program is stellar, while the remote program is less than mediocre, and I'm being generous. Given that Carmel has already announced plans to reopen in the fall, we are reconsidering our school choice. I sincerely hope that LHS will tap into the amazing intellect and creativity of its staff to come up with a safe and feasible way to open. Half days in person, half days remote, smaller classrooms. Other schools throughout the county are figuring it out, and I trust and hope that LHS will too. Our kids' education comes first and will set the path for their future. We failed them these last few months. Let's do better by them and figure out a way to safely reopen and restart learning in the fall. That's from Ann Fahey Widman. Next letter, I realize that there are state guidelines for how and when schools open, but there has to be a way for VHHS and Libertyville to fully open with students in classrooms every day. I need to draw to your attention once again to the fact that there were only 160 reported cases in Vernon Hills out of 27,000 residents. 99% of those were older folks with health conditions. There's not been a spike since all of our kids are hanging out together again. And they are all hanging out together again. They have been seeing each other for weeks now. If kids have health issues or concerns, they should have the choice to learn from home. If a teacher has health issues, they can maybe take a leave of absence. But to change the way our kids learn for basically a handful of kids who may or may not have COVID is not fair to the 99.9% of kids who want to go back to school. E-learning is not an effective mode of instruction. It was a sufficient temporary situation. Our kids need to be able to have a graduation this summer, prom, football games, dances. And again, folks who are not comfortable with that should by all means not attend those functions. We need to have a choice, not sweeping mandates for our area when we have had so few cases. There must be a way to appeal for permission to open based on our local community circumstances. Thank you so much. I know all of this is not easy, but I feel like I at least have to try. Our kids miss school. And that's from Sue Sarah. Dear LHS Board, I would like to request that the board strongly consider moving back to in-person instruction plan in August when school is to resume. I think there are many options that could be utilized to spread students apart. Leverage the gym, auditorium, bring in outdoor space options, while weather is not a barrier, such as outdoor tents, mobile trailers. I would also request that if there were to be an online learning portion, that it would be more structured than that which was provided. The most recent experience provided no motivation, as students were not interacting with faculty and they knew their grade couldn't get worse than it was. I think together with faculty and parents, we can arrive at a safe solution that works for everyone. That's from Mara Sizers. Let's see, this is, Dear Mary, thanks for the notification of the District 128 board meeting on June 22nd. We are writing as a group of concerned parents to voice our opinion on students returning to in-person instruction this coming fall. The intent of this message is only to voice an opinion, as it's difficult to ascertain the sentiment of the board in the current environment. If public opinions are read, great. If not, we provide this only to log our opinions for consideration. No reply is necessary. We strongly support that all students at all grade levels return to in-person instruction for the upcoming school year without restrictions or widespread implementation of any hybrid approach related to COVID-19 concerns. We feel that all extracurricular activities should begin and all sports and other programs should be conducted, including bus service. Some level of extra sanitization, perhaps optimized HVAC and airflow, and very minimally enforced social distancing may be appropriate, but we do not feel it necessary. For the sake of students' physical, emotional, and mental health, their educational mission, personal growth, and resilience, and the community's fiscal well-being, in-person instruction should be engaged immediately. We feel the statistics are very clear. Students are largely not at risk of severe COVID-19. The pathophysiology of the virus is well enough understood to protect those who are at risk, and special cases can be handled as appropriate. We feel there will very likely be an increase in transmission of the virus as schools re-engage. However, we feel the risk is not high, nor will the impact be significant. Fear must not drive decisions. The severe shortcomings of online instruction, excessive and unnecessary quarantines, and lack of socialization of students will have a far more negative and long-lasting impact on the population than this current prevalent respiratory virus ever will. And that's from Kay Miller and others, current and former D70 and D128 parents. Members of the Community High School District 128 Board of Education. Without a doubt, the single most important gift that we can give to our children is the gift of an excellent education. I am the parent of 3 children who are or have been a part of the District 128 School District. My 2 oldest children benefited tremendously from their experience at Libertyville High School and were not able to capitalize on this by pursuing advanced education at 2 excellent universities, Northwestern University and the University of Miami. My 3rd child is currently preparing for her senior year at LHS and is similarly preparing to pursue advanced education. While the experience with the educational opportunities afforded my oldest 2 children at LHS was excellent, excuse me one second. I am very concerned that the same excellent education will not be available to my youngest child because of the COVID outbreak, but more importantly, because lack of preparation for handling the outbreak. The entire world has been affected by the virus. Nothing can change that. All we can do is decide and act on how we deal with it. I was extremely disappointed with the experience that my daughter had during the last 9 weeks of the 2019-2020 school year. During a town hall meeting in March, I heard the principal say that he instructed his teachers to cut in half what they were going to teach during the last 9 weeks and then cut that in half again, and that he instructed that they should be teaching nothing new. That is a full quarter of school year in which the students gain nothing. That loss of education is forever. The lost opportunity to instruct and educate our students is gone. While the end of the 2019-2020 school year is history, the entire 2020-2021 school year is just beginning. I do not want to have our students suffer the same educational loss again. Institutions of higher learning are not changing their expectations for students who apply, and more importantly, for those who are accepted. My son has been completing the exact same classwork with the exact same expectations during this pandemic. He has just been doing it through e-learning. We must ensure that our students are as prepared as ever for the challenges ahead. My understanding is there are 3 options being considered for the opening of the 2020-2021 school year. 1, complete reopening with all students being permitted back in the building, only e-learning via technology, and a hybrid of the above 2. Complete reopening would obviously present the best alternative for learning, but must only be done in a safe environment. I am a physician who has treated many very sick and dying patients, and I greatly respect the devastation that this virus can deliver. I do not want our students to be exposed to unnecessary risk, and if this is the decision that is made, every disease mitigating tactic, distancing, hand washing, etc., must be employed. If the decision is to use some form of e-learning, then that process must be at least as good and deliver the same quality of education as our students have experienced in the past. Students should be required to attend classes virtually and have the opportunity to interact with their teachers in real time. It is also my understanding that the process for moving forward is being constructed by various task forces designated by the District 128 Board. I respectfully request that these task force meetings be open to the public to assure that we can follow the decision-making and the plans for reopening. I've heard frequently that District 128 is addressing the challenges of reopening and teaching in the upcoming school year no differently than other neighboring school districts. I don't care. My daughter is a student in District 128 in the D128 district, and I want to have her to have the same education that her older brother and sister did. Now is not the time to follow. Now is the time to lead. District 128 must be proactive, not reactive, in its approach to the coming school year. I thank you for your time and consideration. David Recker, MD. Next, members of the Community High School District 128 Board of Education. Daring is the mission of CHSD 128, and that there has not been a time in recent history when daring was needed more than it is now. In the face of a pandemic with associated health, economic, and educational impact, our students will easily touch on many of the tenets of daring as we work toward implementing the new normal and continue the hope for a COVID-19 vaccine. This must be the message emphasized to our students as they begin 2020-21 school year. The coronavirus cannot define them and determine their futures. They will determine their own futures through education and hard work, and that is the important business that District 128 must consider in making plans for reactivation of instruction in the fall. The recent correspondence from Superintendent Prentice Lee suggests task forces are working to develop planning for 3 different scenarios for instruction: in-person, hybrid, and virtual. 1, while traditional in-person instruction is obviously preferable and can hopefully be employed, every effort must be made to ensure that e-learning is comprehensive, fully interactive, and able to affect our students the same education they would receive in the classroom. The pandemic interrupted learning in the spring, and I believe there is a majority of parents in the community who found the learning to be inadequate, with minimal new learning offered over the 9-week period and very little direct interaction with teachers. I remain concerned that the students will not be able to acquire the lost instruction as they will be busily embarking on the curriculum for this new school year. Whether prevalence of the virus dictates virtual learning or it is used in a hybrid scenario, it must be high quality and operationally easily employed. 2, the recent Illinois State Board of Education recommendation for in-person instruction is encouraging. However, bringing students together for in-person instruction will require significant planning to ensure the appropriate safety measures are taken to contain the spread of the coronavirus. The requirements for social distancing and masking must continue to be respected and will be challenging given the size of D128 student bodies. The most important mission of the school is to educate our students, and that purpose has never been more important than now, as the pandemic is likely to have a sustained effect on our economy. We cannot let current students be any less prepared for higher learning than their predecessors. The variety of state response to the pandemic will make students in more open states better prepared and more competitive than our students if the traditional high-quality D128 education is not provided. Higher education has expressed no intention of altering expectations or reducing curriculum requirements. The standards of college and universities have not and will not be lowered. Our students must be ready to meet those challenges. I would strongly encourage D128 administrators and the Board of Education to consider parental input and interest in the development of proposed plans. Working together, we are a powerful force for our students. Recognizing that there are governmental constraints that will potentially come into play, I challenge the board to go beyond what other neighboring school districts may be delivering and to do everything in its power to return our students to our, hang on one second, we're missing a back page here. To return our students, I'm sorry, I have lost a page and I am going to have to find that one. Okay, so let me continue and with the next letter, and I will come back and finish this up. Mary, perhaps you can pull that second page up for me. That's Lori Recker. If you can do that, and I'll come back and finish Lori's letter for sure. So let me move on. This is another letter. Members of the board, District 128. In advance of tonight's school board meeting, I wanted to share my views as a Libertyville resident, a parent of 2 current LHS students, and a physician who has actively worked through the pandemic and was intimately involved in reactivating surgical services at Advocate Condell Medical Center. First of all, I have the same expectations as all parents, that the board and administration will do everything in its powers to provide the superior educational experience that we expect as parents and taxpayers. I will not belabor the point that the spring learning experiment was nothing short of abysmal, and we demand better. I strongly believe that teachers do their best when their students, and I strongly wish for in-person teaching. I realize D128 does not operate in a vacuum and must follow state regulations, but D128 must use its voice to advocate for what is best for students, in-person instruction. Secondly, I expect that D128 will remember it has one mission, education of its students. Everything else is secondary to that mission, especially when one remembers the loss of weeks of instruction from the end of last year. Our educators have to do everything in their power to teach our students so that they are prepared for life after high school. I have read many letters from administration regarding our students' mental health and well-being. Frankly, that is not the administration's place. We parents will worry about our children's mental health. D128 leadership and staff must focus on education. Finally, having worked to reactivate surgery at my hospital, I am familiar with the many challenges involved in moving large organizations. D128 has many stakeholders who have concerns about the start of the school year, all of which may be overcome so long as the most important purpose of the district is remembered, teaching kids. Tap the enormous resources of the community to sweep aside the barriers and complete the educational mission. That's from Greg Coronas. Next. Hi, Mary. I'm emailing in hopes that this can be read at tonight's board meeting. Hello. While I know that District 128 has to follow rules set forth by Governor Pritzker regarding e-learning versus in-person learning for 2020-2021 school year, I've heard rumors that this may change, and each school district may be able to make their own decisions on what next year's academic year will look like. While I have already contacted Governor Pritzker with my thoughts on the issue, given what I'm hearing, I also wanted to share the following with you. Of course, a lot can change between now and the start of the school year, but at this time, I'm voicing my very strong opinion that we get kids back to in-person learning. As a pediatrician who has for years been an advocate for in-person rather than e-learning, I've spoken on this topic at a D128 board meeting in the past. My feelings have not changed. Even though we are in the midst of a pandemic, kids learn better through in-person learning. They learn better with person-to-person rather than person-to-screen interactions. They retain information that is written better than if it is typed. The social and emotional benefits of school too, of course, cannot be argued. I'm seeing firsthand in my patient population, sadly, the effects of school closures, the loneliness, isolation, apathy, and depression that some high school age children are experiencing because they can't go to school. It is unfortunately creating an upswing in mental health emergencies. As with most decisions made in life, pros and cons have to be weighed when considering a course of action to take. For myself, who has a child with a chronic immune suppressing medical illness, which makes him more at risk for complications due to COVID-19, my belief is that the benefits of in-person learning versus e-learning at this time outweigh any cons of in-person learning. I can supply published scientific data if anyone would like, demonstrating that other pediatricians feel the same way. I know there is a lot to consider regarding this topic, but I feel strongly that as a community working together, in-person learning can happen safely. For example, we are fortunate to have a hospital right here in Libertyville. If schools open, we can be in communication with Condell. If there are an uptick of COVID-19 admissions after school opens, adjustments can be made. We can look to schools in Europe, which reopened at the beginning of May without a surge in COVID cases. Let's use them as an example and implement some of the ideas they are using. I have lots of other thoughts as how schools can open safely and would be happy to share those with whomever is interested. If there is a committee working on this issue, I would love to be a part of it. Let's get kids back to school. And this is from Katie Talarico. Mary, did you find page 2?
Yes, I have it. You want me to read it? I sent it to you as well.
Did you send it to me? Hang on one second and I'll pick up where Lori left off. Okay, so let me just finish the thought leading to the end here. The standards of colleges and universities have not and will not be lowered. Our students must be ready to meet those challenges. I would strongly encourage D128 administrators and the Board of Education to consider parental input and interest in development of proposed plans for education. Working together, we are a powerful force for our students. Recognizing that there are governmental constraints that will potentially come into play, I challenge the board to go beyond what other neighboring school districts may be delivering and to do everything in its power to return our students to school with whatever degree of in-person instruction can be safely provided. D128 must be the leader and not the follower in preparing our students to define their futures in daring fashion. Thank you for your time and consideration, Lori Recker, mother of 3 LHS students, class of 2015, class of 2018, and class of 2021. So it was just the last few lines. So Pat, that concludes the public comment, and under the superintendent's report, I'll be doing an overview of the process and where we are headed in that planning process moving forward, and we'll likely answer a few of the questions that have been posed tonight.
Okay. All right, great. So first thing I'd say is thanks to everybody that submitted comments. We appreciate your input. Second thing, we will cover this topic in significantly more detail under the superintendent's report. But I would like to reassure everybody, number one, we understand how important it is for us to do everything possible to implement face-to-face instruction in the fall, okay? And you know, I think all of us would agree that is the priority. That is what we want to try to achieve, and we need to see over the next month or so whether or not that's possible. Second thing is, I don't want anybody to think that our plan is to do what other schools are doing because other schools are doing it. Yes, Dr. Lee's in constant communication with a lot of the other schools in our area. But I think that communication and those conversations are for the purposes of understanding and learning, and to learn and understand what other schools are doing so we can maybe better understand some of the issues that we're dealing with. But I wouldn't want anybody to think that those conversations are because some local school is doing something, we're going to do the same. That's at least not the plan as I see it. So, you know, we will make the decision for District 128 within whatever restrictions we need to abide by, but it will be for the good of our D128 students, okay? And beyond that, I think we'll just wait until we get a further update in the superintendent's report. The only other thing I want to mention in my president's report, actually, I just want to say thanks to all of the board members. Last month we had, I think, some very challenging discussions on a number of topics related to COVID. Field trips and others. And I just want to compliment everybody for being open, you know, making sure that everybody's opinion was heard. I think in the end, we got to a point that all of us could support, even if it was a point that maybe not all of us would necessarily have personally agreed to. But again, I want to compliment everybody for the dynamics in that conversation. I think that's the way those kinds of conversations should be. And so I just want to publicly say thanks for your transparency, your honesty, and you're willing to take head on the challenging topics. All right. Okay, let's move on to the superintendent's report.
Okay.
We'll start out with some good news.
Okay, Pat, it's all good news, right? It's always good news at the end of the day. All right, we do have some good news to share tonight. The District 128 Board of Education has supported efforts to update classroom furniture at our schools. Most recently, more than 75 classrooms are being renovated at LHS. While nearly all of the furniture has been delivered, assembled, and installed, one unique aspect of this project is that nearly all the old furniture has been donated to schools in need in Southern Illinois and overseas. This Herculean effort would not have been possible without the coordination by Sandra Kruckman, Tom's executive assistant at LHS, the buildings and grounds staff, assembling, installing, and moving the hundreds of desks, and Mark Koopman and Chris Stansel coordinating a complex project under very tough conditions. So thanks to all, and I'm sure you know, the school districts, both in this country and overseas, that are receiving those desks are going to be very appreciative. Next this spring, during e-learning, 10 VHHS art students in Allison Malloy's drawing and painting studio class put their passion and artistic skills into rendering portraits digitally from home on a variety of software platforms for children in Syria. Although not all students completed this project due to technological limitations and support boundaries, those who did reflected on their experiences in writing for their Global Scholars Portfolio credit. Ms. Malloy noted, every child reflected in the portraits has a different life story, and we hope to create a bridge between cultures when these children receive their gifts honoring their own unique identities. Many of them are affected by war circumstances. By using art to communicate kindness, we aim to build friendship with Syrian youth on a deep and personal level that governments cannot reach. So great job to Allison and her students. And finally, District 128 has received the Association of School Business Officials International, ASBO, Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for the fiscal year ending 2019. This award represents a significant achievement and reflects the district's commitment to transparency and high-quality financial reporting. Congratulations to D128 Assistant Superintendent Dan Stanley and Business Office Assistant Rose DeSico, who prepared the Comprehensive Annual Final Financial Report, or CAFR. So Dan, congratulations to you, Rose, and the team. And I know for our district, that's a number of years in a row, but that's always quite an honor. So congratulations for your good work. Okay. All right. Any questions on the good news? All right. So next, we have diversity and equity work, and it's just as a lead-in to this, just a couple of comments that this month and next month, we wanted to take some time and really highlight commitments that we've made in the district and some of the work that we've done over the past 3 years in diversity and equity. And so tonight I'm going to do a kind of a short lead-in or overview, and then Rita and then Tom and John are going to talk a little bit and highlight some of the work we've done over the past 3 years. We have taken some significant steps forward, and we have a commitment to continue to take steps forward. And what we'd like to do then in July is bring our 4 equity coordinators back and have Rita and the equity coordinators and John and Tom do a deeper dive into where we're heading. And then following that, I'm going to recommend that twice a year, we do an update with our equity coordinators. We have them come in and update, their work moving forward. And that's that is really good reporting out and also an accountability feature moving forward. So, and I think that it will be very good for our entire community to know what we're working on, but also to be a part of that process. So tonight, communication goals of our presentation and discussion tonight. First, District 128 is completely committed to equity and inclusion. It is embedded in our core mission, and we have been doing very real and substantive work in this area for the past several years. Our work has moved from being conducted by individuals working in isolation to being systemic. It is organized around key beliefs and values, and it extends to everyone in our district. It is a primary area of focus. Our work is ongoing. We are proud of our past actions, but we know we have much more to do to fully realize our goals, and that it will be a continual journey. And here's a snapshot of what we have done over the past few years and where we believe we are going and headed. So we have a first slide here as we make the transition. Since the brutal, senseless killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis recently, protests against systemic racism, police brutality, injustice, and societal inequities have been occurring throughout the country. Virtually all institutions and businesses are reflecting upon the ways in which they are committed to equity, justice, and anti-racism. And many are taking explicit actions to not only communicate this commitment, but to further extend and strengthen their work. Tonight, as a District 128 leadership team, we wish to discuss and share the District 128 commitment to equity and inclusion. We believe it is important for our community to know that District 128 is firmly committed to equity, inclusion, and anti-racism. And we believe that by committing to these ideas, we ensure that achievement outcomes for all students will continue to be among the best in the nation. In July, Rita, the equity coordinators, Tom and John, will do a deeper dive in what we have done and, more importantly, at this point, where we are headed in the important equity journey. Let us make it abundantly clear tonight that we know our community expects all of our students to attend schools that are free from bias, hate, prejudice, and discrimination. If students, staff, or families encounter any of these elements in our school or in our district, we want to know. I assure you that we will take these reports seriously and we will act to put them to an immediate end. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Rita, and then Rita will turn it over to Tom and John. Rita?
Thank you, Prentice. Bryant, would you advance to the next slide, please? Thank you. Every single student in our D128 community matters. Every single one. We believe that we are a great district for all of our students, and that means that we are constantly reviewing our policies, curriculum, instruction, procedures, and programs to identify and address any barrier to access to and achievement of the attributes named in our daring mission for any individual or group of students we might identify. For the past several years, D128 has been engaged in honest, difficult, and authentic work of attempting to bring greater equity and inclusion to our schools. Tonight, Tom and John will provide a very brief glimpse of our work in this area, and we hope to provide a more extensive report to you later in the summer. Equity and inclusion have always been D128 values, and there have been many efforts by many people to develop equity and inclusion in our schools. We are grateful for this work, and we know that it serves as the foundation from which our future efforts are built upon. Tonight, we will focus upon our district's more recent actions, which we believe started with our creation and adoption of our daring mission in 2018. The foundation of the daring mission is equity and inclusion for all D128 students. Embedded in this mission is the belief that all D128 students can develop the human skills necessary for success in our changing world and achieve at very high levels of excellence. For this to occur, our entire system must be focused, organized, and committed to realizing this outcome. When you review our daring attributes, you see that elements of equity and inclusion are present in all of them. Tonight, I will highlight two of the attributes where our equity beliefs are particularly visible: aware and global. With aware, we are making the statement that we as a district understand that all of our students need to be aware of their own unique identity traits and their own unique life experiences, and how these influences their perceptions of themselves and others in their world. In addition, being aware extends to learning and understanding how other people with different identity traits may experience and perceive the world differently. Our work is to help students learn to see these differences as natural and normal, to learn how to engage in productive and effective dialogue to better understand these differences, and to ultimately learn to see multiple perspectives and experiences as assets that can be used to build diverse coalitions and teams that serve all members of our global community. Speaking of global, this attribute reflects our understanding that D128 students need to be culturally competent in order to be a productive member of today's globalized society. All students need to understand that being able to communicate, collaborate, and create with people of different languages, religions, races, cultures, and worldviews are essential skills for success in today's increasingly diverse and globalized world. Students who lack the ability to communicate effectively across racial, cultural, or religious boundaries will find themselves limited in the jobs they can access and the opportunities they can pursue. Like all aspects of our mission, D128 is actively developing curricular experiences and extracurricular programs to build both of these attributes within all our students. And now I'm going to turn this over to John.
VHHS Principal Dr. John Gilliam.
Thank you, Rita. Next slide, Bryant. Over time, we've learned that many of the terms we use regarding this topic are subject to multiple interpretations or meanings. So we want to be very clear about what these terms mean in D128 and how they drive our work. This defining of terms has been an integral part in our school level work as well. To start, this simple visual is a great way for us to consider the differences between equity and equality. District 128 certainly believes in equality. We want all of our students to thrive in our system and obtain the highest academic and achievement outcomes possible. In our schools, we believe the way to generate these equally high outcomes is by placing equity as our primary focus. Equity acknowledges that students come to us with unique identities and varied lived experiences. These identities and experiences make up our population's diversity. Our diverse students approach education in a similar manner to the way these riders approach the need for a wheeled mode of transportation. The goal of equity then, in this image, isn't to give each rider the same exact bike. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't be fair. Likewise, the goal of equity in D128 is not to treat all students equally, but rather identify what each child needs for success and work to design our system to deliver those resources. Providing equity means that we believe educational outcomes can be high for all students, but the school experience can look different for each child. When we use the term inclusion, we are stating our belief that, as a general rule, it is best for students, as diverse as they are, to be together in school activities, programs, and classrooms. Inclusive environments find ways to eliminate barriers to participation for students. They seek to limit the ways students are sorted and separated from one another. That is the important work of our system. So speaking of system, if we can go to the next slide, Bryant. What does it mean for our district to take a systemic approach to equity? It's important that we see our school district as a system with its buildings, programs, resources, and people. It is a unified whole, not simply individual parts. As a public school system, we have the extraordinary challenge of designing schools that must meet the unique needs of all of our students. We accept this responsibility and don't believe we can truly say D128 is an excellent school system until we can demonstrate it's excellent for all of our learners. Like the boat with a hole in the bow, a healthy system understands that a failure in any one part is a failure for the whole. If we identify one group of students who is struggling to achieve in our system, we must take action to address this. It is true that sometimes systems discussions centered on equity can create a concern that a school or institution is committed to equity will take resources away from one group of students in the system to give to another. With schools specifically, sometimes a concern is raised that if a school is focused on equity, it will lower its standards and no longer work to push, challenge, or support students from reaching the highest levels of achievement and success. We assure you that neither of these concerns are the case in D128. When it comes to our system resources, D128 believes that our community has provided us the resources to develop, design, and implement programs that support the achievement of all of our students. Tom.
LHS Principal Tom
Thank
Coulantes.
you. And Brian, if we could advance. Yeah, so this is kind of when John and Rita are talking about students becoming aware of their unique identity and that of others. You know, we think about identity in the way that a scientist, like a physicist, would think about light. And that is, we use an equity lens to look at our students. And like a prism divides visible light into very different and beautiful wavelengths, when you use an equity lens and you look at your student population, you take your whole group identity of District 128 students and you divide that into the many beautiful kind of dimensions of identity that we show here. We understand that each of us as individuals have a lot in common as human beings, but we also have differences. And often those differences are determined by where exactly we are located on any of these specific dimensions of identity. And you know, the thing that's important to understand is historically in public education in the United States, it's been acceptable for public schools to just kind of group its data and say, hey, let's see how our students as a whole are doing. But in District 128, our equity work compels us to disaggregate our data. We definitely look at the whole, but then we take time to disaggregate it. And we want to look at our achievement indicators, anything that's important to us that we're trying to measure. We want to look at how it's playing out with these individual dimensions that students may have. Like John and Rita and Prentice said, we don't believe we are a truly, truly excellent school system until we can look parents of all students who locate themselves on these dimensions of identity in the face and say, it is an excellent school for your unique child, right? And so we're committed to looking at our system, disaggregating our data, and if we find a subgroup of students who may not be meeting the high standards that we believe we're capable of, we will immediately begin a process in our system of working to address that. Can we go forward, Bryant? So Rita mentioned the important 21st century skills that we're working to build in our students. We used to have the 3 R's. Now we talk about the 4 C's. And in District 128, our equity work is included with this. We want these skills for all students, but in front of communication and collaboration, we would say intercultural communication and intercultural collaboration, because we know that our world is increasingly globalized and that our students need to communicate and collaborate with people of all of these dimensions of identity. We can move forward, Brian. So as we go back to that idea, you know, we understand that equity work is important for us to do, and we say it's important for all students. Now, sometimes though, in my experience as an educator, people think, yeah, I support equity work, but really, you know, I think it's important just for our minority students or our students that have been historically marginalized. Like, people might think, well, equity work is important for our Black and Latinx students, or it's important for our gay, lesbian, and transgender students, or perhaps it's important for our Muslim students. And while this is certainly true, what we want to make clear in District 128 is that we believe our equity work is equally important for the vast number of students who find themselves in the majority on these dimensions of identity, right? Like, in other words, our equity work is critical for our white students. It's critical for our heterosexual cisgendered students. And it's critical for our Christian identifying students, right? because those of us who may find ourselves in a dominant identity category, we have to accept that we have a responsibility of learning about equity and inclusion and biases and implicit biases, so that we can recognize our own blind spots that we might hold, and the way that we might inadvertently perpetuate inequitable systems. And so that's been a lot of our work, and our focus is helping every student kind of enter this work in a way that's safe for them, to develop this idea of what intercultural competency, racial literacy, and cross-cultural communication skills look like. We know that these skills are as important to our students' long-term success in life as is their literacy skills and their numeracy skills. And I would ask you on the board just to think about your own lives in business, your own professional lives. I bet many of you in business work in international corporations. I bet many of you have mission statements that are tied into serving all communities. And I bet many of you are experiencing a ton of focus and emphasis on how you meet consumers in all markets, or how you communicate effectively to all of our community stakeholders. That is an essential skill for you. It's something that you are looking for in all of the talent you are bringing into your organization. And so we feel like that is an essential piece of the work we're doing with all of our students, is preparing them to not just be able to participate in that process, but to enter organizations and to be able to lead that process. We can go forward, Brian. This is a really fascinating stat for me. So the projections, and we'll probably get a new updated one, as this year is a census year, but basically in 2045, that is the year where the United States is projected to become a majority minority country, meaning that the white population will be less than 50% of our national population. And if you think about that, it's 2020 right now, and our kids are 14 to 18 years old. In the 25 years when this happens, many of them will be in their 40s, their late 40s, and they will be the leaders of whatever organization they are in. And so we are preparing our students to live in this world, but not just to live in this world, like I said, but to thrive and to lead. When they are our age, 20 to 25 years from now, this is projected to be the world and the society of the United States. And we want all of our District 128 students to be prepared to operate successfully in that environment. So we'll go to the next slide. So it's one thing to talk about equity and to share like a commitment to this mission, but we know that if you're really going to do this, it's about action, right? And we want our actions to demonstrate and to live our mission. So John and I wanted to give you just the briefest overview of some of the actions that we've taken, and this is just a fraction of the work that we're doing.
John Gilliam.
Thanks, Tom. I think maybe at the top of this list, highlighting first, both Tom and I and our buildings went through the process last spring to bring on board equity coordinators. So at LHS, Tom has a part-time equity coordinator, and I have two that split a similar stipend at our school. Grateful to the Board of Education for approving those hires, and both super excited about the work that these three individuals, along with leadership teams throughout the buildings, are doing. And we are hopeful that we can hear from them at a board level later this summer. Next, we have been reviewing our hiring and onboarding practices to attract and retain diverse candidates. This is something that we have strived to do for several years, and it is a process that we are making gains with. You certainly heard from Hala Abdel Razek, one of our board reps, last month or maybe a couple months ago, who shared a perspective that she is hoping that our staff continues to look more and more like our student body. And so that is a goal that we have as well as an administration. We've invested considerable time and resources in several professional development and learning opportunities over the last year plus. This year, for the first time that I can remember, and I've been in this district over 25 years, we actually had a complete day dedicated to this important work. We call it our D128 Daring Day, in which our equity coordinators and leadership teams developed a professional development day centered around this topic. Then a few weeks later, we had another Teacher Institute day, and we've had several other learning opportunities throughout the year to discuss equity and inclusion from a professional and practical level here at schools. And then finally, from a professional learning standpoint, we have partnered with Pacific Education Group to send well over probably 50 staff members, maybe even more, most of all of our building administrators, to courageous conversations about race. Some of these local events, some of these regional events, some of them national, but again, challenging work that's encouraging us to consider what we're doing in this really important conversation. And then finally, on this left-hand side, as you know, Board of Education, we worked with our calendar committee. Several of our students from Libertyville and Vernon Hills spoke to the need to adjust our D128 school calendar, specifically as it related to the Muslim holiday Eid, and that was completed this spring. Again, just another indication that we are taking serious the work that we're doing in this area.
Yeah, and to continue that, while we work so hard, and I think when you've been in our buildings, you have felt the tremendous school spirit we have. Our staff is proud to be District 128. Our students are proud to be Wildcats and Cougars, and they unite and they celebrate their school spirit. But within that, we are also working to create opportunities for people who share one of those dimensions of identity to find ways to come together and talk and support one another. It can be really, really tough to be one of only a few of anything, correct? In a large system where it seems like everyone is different than you in one way or another. And so we want to give opportunities for students and staff who we care about, who are present in our system, but who may be very small in terms of their overall number in our system, to come together to talk about their experiences, the ways that they navigate our schools, and the ways we can work to support them to ensure that their needs are being heard in the same way that any majority group is being heard. Our departments are actively exploring their curriculums and looking at what are they teaching, why are they teaching it, what options do they have, and how do we create a robust and diverse offering for all of our students that expose them to what we call windows and mirrors, right? We want our curriculum to be windows into other people's experiences so we can learn about others, but we also want it to be a reflection of our own lives, and so we can deepen our understanding of ourselves. And so we're actively looking at that, and we're looking at the way that our curriculum kind of includes perspectives and representatives from all different aspects of the human experience. I mentioned about disaggregating our data. We're developing equity skills and targets that we want our students and staff to be able to have, and ways that we identify those when they show up, and ways that we build those into the curriculum. And then one thing that I think, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I hope you are, and if you are, I hope you're so proud of this. The CSL, which Vernon Hills is part of, the Central Suburban League, and the North Suburban Conference, our athletic and extracurricular conferences, were the first two conferences in the state of Illinois to adopt an official hate speech policy for athletic contests. It started in the CSL, and John and I were both present when it was created there, and then we were able to bring it to the NSC. But essentially what that does is it says that if there's hate speech during an athletic competition, that the competition can potentially stop, that the game is not more important than that, and that we have a process for addressing that in the moment it occurs, because we believe the safety of our student athletes, our coaches, our staff, and our fans are paramount. And we're so proud of this. It's been in place for the last couple years, and now the IHSA is using the CSL and NSC model as their model for proposal of a statewide hate speech policy for athletics. So this is just one example where District 128 has been working as a leader in equity work, not only in our own communities, but across the state. With that, we'll go to the last slide. While we're very, very proud of the work that we're doing, and while we're doing it in an inclusive way with student voice and staff voice and community voice, we understand that there's a long way to go and that there's still so much that we must do. And so we're aware we're on this journey. One of our agreements is we stay engaged. This is not something we just do once in a while. John and I are, as leaders of the school, Rita and Prentice as leaders of the district, are keeping us focused on this. This is a constant area of discussion for us. And we welcome the accountability that we need to have in order to ensure that every single child at District 128 has an excellent and equitable education. I think Dr. Lee was going to close us out.
So, just to echo again, we'd like to bring our equity coordinators back in July, do a deeper dive on where we're headed moving forward. We've done some really good work over the last 3 years. And as Tom and John and Rita have all said, we have a long way to go. And the answer to this question is always, we can always do better. And so we're on a journey, but we're on a committed journey. The board has supported that journey on multiple levels, emotionally, financially, practically speaking. And that's really important for us to be able to do that work. But, valuing, the diversity we have in the district and everything that makes that diversity up, and the richness of that environment and what everybody brings to the table is very, very important. And we're all committed to that. So we're excited to continue to take steps forward, to report that out, to be challenged when, there are areas to be challenged. We accept that as part of the growing process. And as a result, collectively, we're going to continue to improve and take steps on that journey. So Pat, with that, open up to any comments or questions from anyone. And thanks to Rita, Tom, and John. Comments?
So I'll just ask one. So I know, John, you mentioned some of the things we're trying to do from a recruiting standpoint, but Brian, can you add any additional comments to that? Because I know you've been working pretty hard on that as well.
Associate Superintendent Brian Kelly.
So as far as recruiting for our staff, we've kind of overhauled, I think, the way that our process starts. So, from our department supervisors all the way to approving our new hires, trying to get out and connect to some candidates that aren't in our area. So we've gone, we've sent a couple people to, this is all before the pandemic happened, but we had some people that attended a job here in Chicago to recruit some more candidates, more diverse candidates. Our system allows us to recruit from, all over the country, which again is very difficult though to get candidates from outside the state of Illinois to come here. But we're trying our best to try to, attract, any type of candidate that we can, that is willing to come to, District 128. I thought we've done a much better job in the last couple of years to try, as John says, to try to match our teaching staff to our student staff. And recognizing too that having multilingual, staff members is important for both our students and our family. And I think, we've done that in a couple of areas at our schools moving forward.
Pat Grudy.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Let's move on to school reopening.
Superintendent Lee.
Pardon, Pat, say that again.
Let's move on to the school reopening, I think, unless there are any other comments.
We good?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the superintendent's report is school reopening. A couple of things before we just kind of do an overview of where we've been, where it may look like we're headed in terms of options. We've continued to work very hard at communication, every 5 to 10 days, really going back to March and certainly toward the end of the year as we're trying to look forward to what we may be doing next year collectively. We've attempted to communicate process with folks and options, and we want to take a little time and review that tonight. But I do want to make one comment that it is very important for our community to not react to what another community may put out. And for example, a comparable district to us to the south a week ago put something out to their parents that they were going to open up an e-school. And then some folks, even in our community, assumed that we were going to make that decision to do that, and that, we don't even have enough information from the state to do that, but that wouldn't have been our first shot out of the box, understanding we're a different school district. So we're going to continue to communicate. We're going to continue to be transparent and honest, working with our community, because that's what we've always done. Many of us are parents ourselves. Our own kids have gone through the schools here, and we understand the importance of that. So just as that as a, maybe a bit of a precursor. So Bryant, if you could put the first slide up, transitioning to 21-22 school year, and then take us right to the second page. Okay, so some really important background to consider. The decision to, number one, the decision to allow the reopening of Illinois schools for any form of in-person learning will be made by the governor, and specific parameters and conditions for reopening schools will be dictated by ISBE and IDPH. So that's Illinois State Board of Education and the Illinois Department of Public Health. Those decisions will not be made by local school boards, okay? If we have some flexibility there within that decision-making, we can certainly take a look at that. But the decisions of whether to allow us to bring students back to school and the parameters and conditions for that will be set by the governor, ISBE, and IDPH. Two, due to potential changes to contractual working conditions, any identified reopening scenario is subject to collective bargaining with unions if it's different than a regular traditional school setting. That is true across the state of Illinois with all unions. In our case, we have a teachers union. Many districts have multiple unions within their setup. Three, District 128, Oak Grove District 68, Libertyville District 70, Roundout District 72, and Hawthorne District 73 are all actively planning for and working on reopening options that best meet the needs of their students. And the related superintendents, including me, are in communication regularly with each other. And four, other area high school districts are all actively planning for and working on reopening options that best meet the needs of their students. And the related superintendents, including me, are in communication with each other, as Pat noted earlier. So those are some important considerations. Bryant, you can go to the next slide. So this is the Restore Illinois plan that everybody's familiar with, that we shared with our parents at least twice when it came out, and that we reference moving forward. It's very easy to find if someone needs to find it. But what we're anticipating is that, the governor's moving us to phase 4. in revitalization. And so essentially that allows the conversation for schools to reopen under guidance from the Illinois Department of Public Health, who of course will be working with the Illinois State Board of Education. Face covering, social distancing, other safety and health measures may need to be taken to open. But we're anticipating we're moving that direction, and that we're going to be able to have some additional conversations. So Brian, you can go to the next slide. Okay, Restore Illinois Plan Phase 4. So again, schools and districts are encouraged to transition to in-person instruction as regions transition to Phase 4. The following IDPH requirements must be met. Now, this is in the original Restore Illinois plan. Require use of appropriate personal protective equipment, PPE, including face coverings. Prohibit more than 50 individuals from gathering in one space. So that'd be a more confined space. Require social distancing. Conduct symptom screenings and temperature checks, or require self-certification that individuals entering school buildings are symptom-free, and increase school-wide cleaning and disinfection. So those are all things, there's nothing in there that we all haven't seen publicly at some point in terms of health and safety protocol. Okay, Brian, you go to the next one. So as we began our work together, we actually established an operating decision-making philosophy. And first in that is decision-making will best ensure student, staff, and visitor safety, health, and well-being, knowing that any of our plans will likely be disrupted or revised as new information emerges. Next, decision-making will best follow CDC, Governor, ISBE, and IDPH opening options and related parameters and conditions. Next, decision-making application and implementation will best support our daring mission statement. And finally, decision-making will best incorporate adaptability and flexibility to meet changing needs and requirements. Okay, Brian, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so here are the redefined scenarios that all 868 school districts in the state arrived at, and ISBE has reinforced that these are the possible options. One, adapted in-person opening, which would be a back to normal opening with physical adaptations such as temperature checks, masks, social distancing, etc. Two, a hybrid or a hybrid modified opening, teaching and learning adaptations combined with physical adaptations noted above. So a hybrid opening would incorporate dividing your student body up to decrease the number of students in the building at any one time. And there are a couple of main ways of doing that. And I will talk about in a few minutes one of our groups that's working on those options. And then three, of course, would be a remote opening, what we're calling enhanced remote learning or e-school. So just to point out again, none of us were satisfied or happy with the e-learning parameters and conditions that were set for us last spring. Really started out as more of a temporary, maybe 2-week or 4-week plan, and then it was extended out to the rest of the school year. So we share, you know, a number of sentiments. I think our teachers worked very hard within the framework they were given to do that, but there were some inherent inadequacies in those parameters and conditions the state gave us. So we're, you know, largely on the same page moving forward that we really want an e-school, e-learning system that's reflective of District 128 and the great work our administrators and teachers do with students in that process. So anything that we do in remote learning will not resemble the parameters and conditions we had last spring. So Bryant, you can go to the next screen. So our planning structure is we have a core group that includes the district leadership team, Tom and John, and several building leaders, and they're functioning as a coordination and facilitating group for the work that we're doing in this area. We have a broader task force or the actual work group that's broken down into 8 different groups that are looking at a number of categories moving forward. But that broader task force includes a number of students. It has parent representation. Don Carmichael and Casey Rooney, two of our board members, are also on that group. And we have really been working together. It's a 50-ish number group, and is broken down into smaller task force. And those working task forces are teaching and learning, scheduling, health and safety, extracurricular activities, rentals, and community education, human resources, distance learning, communication, and special services, special logistics for individualized student needs. So those are our 8 work groups. And in a little less than 3 weeks, they've done, some terrific work. And what those groups needed to do and the work we needed to do was to go as far as we could and then receive actual guidance from the state with the parameters and conditions that we would need to meet for any of those 3 options. So many of you have read in the newspaper, if you follow the Illinois State Board last week, the state superintendent made some comments at the state board meeting last week that Daily Herald picked up on about the possibility of in-person opening, and then indicated that the schools, the superintendents and schools would be receiving additional guidance regarding the possibility of that and the parameters and conditions on Friday. And we didn't receive that guidance on Friday. We received an update from the state superintendent that indicated that we'd be a few more days before we got the guidance, but that they were still encouraging in-person learning. And for school districts that could not do that, that they look at a modified hybrid option of bringing students back. Now, with that said, okay, we need to be very clear because all of that is in the public domain. Okay, everything I said is in the public domain, okay, and could be found and FOIA'd. So again, we're just being very honest, but we have to have the actual guidance and the parameters and conditions before we can determine what we might need to do, and then what we need to do that to open for in-person learning. So we're waiting for that guidance, and that guidance is really critical. So all 8 of these groups have done their work, up to a certain level, and then waiting for guidance that we were anticipating around this time in June, actually around June 26th, when the 30-day period was up in phase 3, anticipating the governor's decision to move to phase 4. Okay, so again, waiting for guidance, waiting for what our options can be with that guidance, and then the particular parameters and conditions and what we would need to do that and make that work. So there's not a guarantee, as we all know, working with state government until we have it, until we can look specifically at what it says, until our work groups can analyze that information, we cannot make, no school can make a recommendation at this point. So it is really important. Let's do a what if. It would be really important if we could start in-person learning. Then we realize at some point during the year that we may have to pivot, and we might have to pivot to remote learning. And then after a period of time, perhaps we can come back to school, but perhaps the governor would say, but we're more concerned about social distancing now, so we want you to use a modified hybrid, so you're only bringing half of your student body back into the building. So regardless of what the option is, once we get guidance, we will run the ground ball out with remote learning or e-school. We'll run the ground ball out with modified hybrid schedule, knowing that, and all the details that go with that, knowing that we might have to pivot to those things during the year. Now, conversely, If we had to start in a modified schedule this year, then we would run out a, complete opening with PPE, health and safety requirements, and then we would run out e-learning. So whatever option it was, we will continue our work in the other areas once we get that additional guidance. And the groups have done terrific work in teaching and learning and scheduling and health and safety. And there's, you just go right down the list. There are a lot of implications. The last thing is that we know that we have 80 plus students in the district that are not going to be able to return to school whenever we return to in-person learning or modified hybrid when we bring students back due to medical and complicating conditions. We also know that we may well have some staff members that fall into that category. So for those individuals, we will be continuing to pursue distance learning as a way to keep those students actively engaged and also keep our faculty members that might not be able to come back for medical reasons, productively working with our students as well. So we are in a really good place to pivot any direction that we need to go, although it appears, again, qualifying that there may be an opportunity to seriously look at potential in-person learning. And again, that's out in the public domain. We want to make sure that, everyone knows that that is a potential option, but we will not know until we get the guidance and the parameters and the conditions moving forward. So that's basically where we've been, the work that we've done. I want to thank all 50 people that are working on those, that make up the task force, that are working on the work groups. We are in continual Zoom conferences. I can tell you all week, we're just on continual Zoom conferences with our groups and the folks that are leading those groups. Many of them are sitting right in front of us tonight in the Zoom conference, are doing a really terrific job. And I'm very proud of the work they've done in walking that fine line between not going so far down a path with a plan that if another decision's made, then we totally have to crash that plan and start all over again because there's not time to do that. So we've run all three of these stems, if you will, out to a good point. And whichever direction we end up going, we'll want to continue our work on the other two stems, knowing that we will well have to pivot to those at some point in the future. So with that said, Pat, I'll open it up for any questions or comments. And Rita, Tom, John, Mary, who am I missing here? Bryant, Dan, our alt Mark, we're all working on groups. So, and again, that's where we stand right now, anticipating if Dr. Ayala was correct in her message the other day, she said a few days. And so let's hope that means by the end of this week. And that would be a very, very good thing for us to know.
Okay, any questions or comments from any of the other board members?
Board member Karen Lundstedt.
No, just, thank you so much for all the work you're doing, and for the task force. And, it's an impossible scenarios to kind of come up with. And we just appreciate all that you're doing and the wise way you're doing it.
Anybody else?
I've been really impressed with the group that I've been working with. It's being led by Rita and two of our assistant principals. And first, it's being really well led. But there's also just great teachers in that group. There's a student in that group. And everybody's voices are being heard. And they are diverse voices. So there's we're not leaving any stones unturned. It's been hard work, but it's been very satisfying to work with these groups.
Great, thanks, Tom. Anybody else? Okay.
Okay.
Next capital project updates. Superintendent's report. Yep.
Mark, Dan, just want to give a quick round the horn.
Very, very briefly, if we could. Yeah.
Mark?
Very briefly, In the academic wing, finishing up the roofs. We're working on finishes on the interior. Brick is going up on the exterior. Glass framing is in. We're getting ready for glass. In the cafeteria expansion at Vernon Hills, all the underground plumbing was inspected by our state inspector on Friday, so we'll be pouring concrete and getting that done so we can move forward with getting equipment set and flooring installed in that area. And the gym is progress moving forward on the gym. We bricked in the area that was the access to get the crane as well as concrete trucks in. Now the roof structure is totally, the framing for the roof structure is totally up. The pan deck is on, so there's going to move forward with roofing there. At Libertyville High School, this morning, I had a walkthrough with the ROE, as well as with our architect. And we're submitting the paperwork for occupancy over there at Libertyville High School for the old pool renovations, which is a dance studio and also the multi-purpose gym.
Pat Grudy.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Okay, Pat, I'll move on to number 5 on the superintendent's report. Next up on the superintendent's report is the 2020-2021 Illinois Association of School Boards annual membership dues. This district has been a historic member of this group. Jim is our most direct connection to IASB, but they do an incredible job of educating, training, and supporting school board members, which means that they're also supporting school districts, of course, in terms of doing that. So as always, we recommend approval and payment of the annual membership dues. So Pat,
Okay.
that would be our recommendation, be looking for a motion.
Okay, can I ask for a motion to approve the 2020-2021 IASB annual membership dues in the amount of $10,415?
So moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Batson.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Grudy.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Huber.
Aye.
Lundstedt.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
All right, motion carries.
Okay, Pat, then I'll move on to number 6 on the superintendent's report, 2020-2021 Ed-Red annual membership fee. As the board will recall, the district also has a long relationship with Ed-Red, which is one of our primary advocate lobbyist groups for suburban school districts. And do a terrific job for us advocating for public schools and important positions for public schools in Springfield and with the governor's office. So our annual membership fee for next year is $5,000. And again, we would recommend board's approval of paying our 2020-2021 membership fee.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the $5,000 to renew the 2020-2021 Ed-Red annual membership fee?
So moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Grudy.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Huber.
Aye.
Lundstedt.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
All right, motion carries.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda, and Pat did an initial canvas of the board. At the beginning of the meeting, number 7 is semi-annual review of closed session meeting minutes. And our recommendation is that we do not release any of the minutes in this cycle. So that would be our recommendation, Pat, looking for a motion.
All right, is there a motion to not release the not release the closed session meeting minutes as presented in your board packet?
So moved.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Grudy.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Huber.
Aye.
Lundstedt.
Aye.
Rooney,
Aye.
Batson,
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
All right, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And then number 8, and hopefully finally on the superintendent's report tonight, we had 2 FOIA requests since our last meeting. We had a FOIA request received on 5/28/20, and the response deadline was 6/4/2020. The requester was Jonathan Fagg from ABC 7, Jonathan P. Fagg at abc.com. Information requested, information related to student attendance during the current period of remote learning. For this request, please provide a breakdown of attendance rates by school, by whatever measures your district is tracking engagement, as well as details of how attendance is being tracked in this period. Please provide information broken down by school in your district from when remote learning began until the most current date available upon production. And the follow-up was done by Bryant, and the request was fulfilled and sent on 6/3/20. Second FOIA request was received on 6/11/20. Response deadline was 6/18/20. The requester was Tim Grammons at grammontim@atnt.net. Information requested, please send me a copy of the Rustic Pathways agreement, binding legal terms for my review. Follow-up was done by Carol Scoden, and we fulfilled that request on 6/18/2020. Patton, believe it or not, I have no other tonight, so
Okay.
unless there are some other questions or comments from the board, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, great, thanks. So in summary, I think we're still waiting for the guidance on the return to school, but the situation is improving, and I know we have a lot of residents online. I think there were 37 people on the call. At one point, I think it was up to 52. So I certainly hope that some of the questions were answered for some of the people that were online with us tonight. Okay, next, the consent vote agenda is listed. We reviewed it earlier tonight. Can I ask for a motion to approve the consent vote agenda as listed?
I move to approve the consent vote agenda as listed.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
Yeah, I just have
Alright.
one question. This for
Sure,
Dan.
go.
I asked it during finance, and that is, I saw we had like north of $300,000 of checks written to AP for AP testing for our kids. Don't the kids pay for that at least, right? Is that just an offset or what?
Yep, it's money in and money out.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure we get that on for the record. So
Yeah,
thanks.
good question, Kevin. All right, anything else? All right, roll call, please.
Oh. Hessel,
Aye.
Huber,
Aye.
Lundstedt,
Aye.
Rooney,
Aye.
Batson,
Aye.
Carmichael,
Aye.
Grudy.
Aye. All right, motion carries. All right, Program and Personnel Committee, Chairperson Batson.
Board Member Jim
Thank you,
Batson.
Dr. Grudy. We have on our list is some board policy updates for a first reading. These were reviewed in committee earlier this evening, and we've reviewed all the changes. There is one new one that was added. That's policy 5:35, compliance with Fair Labor Standards Act. But these will once again be reviewed in policy in the Program and Personnel Committee meeting in July, and then voted on in the during the July board meeting. So any comments or questions that the board has? Okay, and moving on, we have an update on the 2019-2020 final school calendar. And again, this is just for information purposes. This was a revision to acknowledge the remote learning days and the various active God days and professional development days that were provided by recommended by the state, in some cases required by the state. But anyway, just to update the current calendar to reflect what actually happened. So no action is required on that. Any comments or questions? No, we reviewed that earlier in committee as well. And this will be the shortest program and personnel committee portion of a board meeting in the recent history that I can remember. That
Okay,
concludes.
thanks. Thanks, Jim. Facilities and Finance, Chairperson Huber.
All right, so we first opened the meeting. We opened the meeting with a hearing regarding a resolution for authorizing transfer from the Education Fund into the Operations and Maintenance Fund. So there were no comments on that. We've discussed that extensively at the committee level. Is there any more discussion that needs the board would like to have? All right, seeing none, then may I have a motion to approve the authorizing transfer from the Education Fund into the Operations and Maintenance Fund as presented?
So moved.
So moved.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thanks, Don. All right, Carol, you want to call it?
Huber,
Aye.
Lundstedt,
Aye.
Rooney,
Aye.
Batson,
Aye.
Carmichael,
Aye.
Grudy. Grudy,
You're muted, Pat.
Sorry, guys. Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
All right, great. So then the next resolution we're looking for is a resolution abating the working cash fund. Dan, you want to give a 1 minute what this resolution entails, please?
Yep. This is a resolution essentially to transfer money from the working cash fund to our capital projects fund for the payment of our big projects that are going on. This is so, but unfortunately in the working cash fund, you can't call it a transfer. You have to call it an abatement. So that's the verbiage used for that. So we're transferring $5 million from we're abating $5 million from the working cash fund into the capital projects fund.
All right, again, this was also discussed at committee level. We discussed it at the last month's committee level as well. So any other questions by the board on this one? All right, seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the resolution abating the working cash fund as presented?
So moved.
Thanks, Jim. Second, please.
Second.
All right. All right, Carol, you want to call it?
Lundstedt,
Aye.
Rooney,
Aye.
Batson,
Aye.
Carmichael,
Aye.
Grudy,
Aye.
Hessel,
Aye.
Huber.
Aye. All right, so that one goes through. Next resolution is a resolution calling for, a public hearing on our fiscal year 2021 budget. Our fiscal year begins this July. So we need to get this resolution calling for that public hearing. I believe the public hearing is on August 10th, 2020 and it's going to take place at the administrative offices. Hopefully, of course. And I think it looks like it's going to be held at 5:45, which is a different time.
That would be between our two committee meetings.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for clarification.
We hope it'll be.
Well, we hope, right? We hope. So any other questions on that topic, that resolution? All right. Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the resolution calling for a public hearing on the fiscal year 2021 budget as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, Carol?
Rooney,
Aye.
Batson,
Aye.
Carmichael,
Aye.
Grudy,
Aye.
Hessel,
Aye.
Huber,
Aye.
Lundstedt.
Aye.
All right, great. That is passed. The next item on our agenda is there's going to be an anonymous donation made to the LHS Athletic Department for the purpose of the girls and boys gymnastic program and to put new banners up. It's the purchase and installation of 5 girls and 7 boys gymnastics record boards. Again, anonymous donation of $6,900, according to a quote from Bannerville, USA. And I guess we'll take action on this as well. I don't know what action we're taking since it's a donation, but
To accept the donation.
we will accept the donation graciously and thankfully accept the donation. May I have that motion, please? To accept
I
the donation.
move to accept the donation gratefully.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Second.
Second.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, Carol.
Batson,
Aye.
Carmichael,
Aye.
Grudy,
Aye.
Hessel,
Aye.
Huber,
Aye.
Lundstedt,
Aye.
Rooney,
Aye.
Good. All right. Next item on our agenda is, as we typically do, we work in hand with the Village of Libertyville. They currently are requesting an easement for a temporary water main replacement easement, and that's on our property. We talked about this extensively at the committee meeting as well. So any other comments regarding that? I believe there was an issue. Thanks to Mark for getting that information for us so we can approve this if there is a motion made to do so. So may I have a motion to approve the West Park Avenue, Libertyville temporary water main replacement easement agreement as presented?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second, thank you. Further discussion on the easement. And again, just
We've already talked about this in the past, so we probably don't have to spend too much time on it, but the public should know that what's going to happen out there.
okay. Dan, you just want to briefly tell the public what's going to happen. And again, what's important to note is they're going to do some work on our property. We will enter into a good faith, best efforts to have a permanent agreement, I believe, after the work is done, if I understand everything correctly.
Director of Facilities Mark Koopman.
Yes, presently the water main that runs down Route 176 is located on the south side of 176. It has been failing for years, many bursts. The village is replacing that water main, and in order to do that, they want to leave that live, relocate the new water main on the north side of the street, which requires an easement to run across the front of our property, just inside the IDOT easement.
Board Member Kevin Huber.
And Mark, how long is this going to take?
They're scheduling it approximately 6 months total all the way through. I don't believe they'll be working on our property that long, but that is the time frame for them to bid and get the work done.
All right. So those driving down 176 should be prepared for the flaggers, potentially. Yes?
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, great. Other comments? Thanks, Don, for making sure we get some of that on the record. That is pretty important. So, all right, seeing none, can I have that motion? And we'll.
We already did it.
Did I already get that one?
We just did roll call.
I just need to do roll call.
All right, great, thanks.
Okay. Carmichael,
Aye.
Grudy,
Aye.
Hessel,
Aye.
Huber,
Aye.
Lundstedt,
Aye.
Rooney,
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
All right, wonderful. Next item is our annual 2020 audit engagement. As we just said, our 21 fiscal year starts July 1st, so our 20 fiscal year ends on June 30th. Our audit is being conducted by Miller Cooper and Company Limited. The audit fee has not gone up. So may I have a motion to approve the audit engagement letter as presented with the fees of $41,500 for audit and not audit services, $1,500 for the CYEFR, and the single audit $2,500. And this is all for the year end in 2020.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Great. Thanks, Jim. Other comments? Okay.
Grudy,
Who did you say, Carol?
Grudy,
Okay, aye, sorry.
sorry. Hessel,
Aye.
Huber,
Aye.
Lundstedt,
Aye.
Rooney,
Aye.
Batson,
Aye.
Carmichael.
All right. Great. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a school treasurer's bond. Dan, you want to briefly tell everybody why we paid $24,900 for a school treasurer's bond and How much?
Pay
that bond?
24, we pay 24.9 because we don't have to pay 35. This is a requirement for, so I serve as the district treasurer. You're required to bond the school treasurer. And so that does that, so that it's a percentage of our fund balance that's calculated based on that. So in order to protect the district from certain losses. So this is a requirement to have your treasurer bonded.
Okay. Questions of Dan on this? Again, the amount's 24.9. So may I have a motion to accept the school treasurer's bond from Arthur J. Gallagher Risk Management Services in the amount of $24,900.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Don. Okay, Carol.
Hessel,
Aye.
Huber,
Aye.
Munstead,
Aye.
Rooney,
Aye.
Batson,
Aye.
Carmichael,
Aye.
Grudy.
Aye. Okay, one of the final things on our report is a district athletic towel service contract. We talked about this in committee as well. There is one follow-up item that will be presented to the committee, I believe, at the next meeting, or at least a little bit more information, but we were comfortable with the presentation. So may I have a motion to approve Airmark uniform as our provider of towel service for the 2021 year for a cost of $22,176 for both high schools.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Questions? Other than the one that's outstanding that will get addressed at the next meeting or next committee meeting. So, okay, call it.
Huber,
Aye.
Munstead,
Aye.
Rooney,
Aye.
Batson,
Aye.
Carmichael,
Aye.
Grudy,
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
All right. Anything else for facilities and finance for Dan, Mark, myself, anybody else? All right. Seeing none, we back to the president.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Cito, Karen?
Just real quickly, we had our quarterly meeting, and as a reminder, the IDEA grant money will no longer flow through CEDAL to us. It will come directly to us, and I think that was approved, change the articles of joint agreement. And the preliminary budget was also approved at $58,813,300. So that reflects that those funds will no longer be flowing through. That's the big change from last year. So that's it.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. Okay. No IASB. There was no need for an executive session. So there was no need to return to open session. So with that being said, we're done. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Board Member Jim Batson.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, wait,
Brian,
Brian.
you got one thing?
Brian Kelly.
You're muted,
Mute.
Brian.
Carol needs to take a roll call on this.
Oh, really? On the adjournment?
Yes.
Oh, because it's not executive session.
It's a change in the Open Meetings Act, so she does need to do a roll call.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah. All right. So roll call, Karen. Carol.
Munstead,
Aye.
Rooney,
Aye.
Batson,
Aye.
Carmichael,
Aye.
Grudy,
Aye.
Hessel,
Aye.
Huber.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. With that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Good
Aye,
night.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Kevin, right?